In the mid to late 90s, a critically acclaimed franchise, Panzer Dragoon, was born on the Sega Saturn. The original game and its two sequels were all developed by an internal Sega team known as Team Andromeda. But after the third game, Panzer Dragoon Saga, the team was dissolved and its members absorbed into other Sega development teams. Well, not all its members. You see, a certain Yuji Yasuhara decided not to stay at Sega. He instead went to Kazunori Yamauchi, the CEO of a Japanese developer known for a very different kind of game. Polyphony Digital, the creators of Gran Turismo on the PlayStation. The on-rails experience of a former Panzer Dragoon developer now combined with the highest technical excellence and production value. It was a good recipe, but they needed one more ingredient. That's right. They brought on Shoji Kawamori, the man who created the mecha from Macross. Now they were set. Together, Yasuhara, Yamauchi, and Kawamori would make a game with Panzer Dragoon's action, but more demanding, with Gran Turismo's fidelity, but more intense, with Macross's mecha, but more badass. What would the result of all that even look like?
Omega Boost, it's all set. Carry out the mission carefully.
Omega Boost would release in 1999, at the tail end of the PlayStation's run. A single-player on-rails shooter with a slick sci-fi style, multiple boss fights per stage, and faster, smoother gameplay. There was little in the way of an advertising budget, but what few commercials it did get focused on the fast-paced gameplay.
PlayStation.
Reviewers near universally praised the audio and visuals, but criticized it for its uneven difficulty and short length. With skilled players able to punch through the game's 9 levels in under an hour, but less skilled players never actually able to beat it. The game was unforgiving. You see, you'd start with a full life bar, and enemies would try to whittle you down until you died. Pretty standard stuff, right? At the end of the level, when your score was being tallied, you'd get some life back, and that would be the amount of life you'd start the next level with. Now, if you were to die in that next level, you could use one of your continues, which would send you back to the start of the level, with the same amount of HP you had before. What this meant was, you could get yourself into a situation where you start a really hard level with only, say, 1/3 of your life bar, and no way to get it higher until you beat the level and get the post-boss healing. A lot of people were turned off by this system, but honestly, I came to appreciate it. That one life bar you got, it all sort of tied those 9 levels together into one long super level in my mind. It also drove home that feeling of you and your one single robot against impossible odds. The gameplay, to me, is sublime. You sort of on rails, but not really, and the combat is 360 degrees, which would be impossible to keep track of if not for the lock-on button, a button that's use is only exceeded by the fire button. Clicking and holding the lock-on button would center your view on the closest group of enemies, which makes switching from swarm to swarm super fast, and enables you to actually deal with all those enemies flying around at hypersonic speed. You move at a set speed and can also come to a full stop, which is a very useful tactic against certain enemies. There is a dodge boost, but it only allows you to boost forward, which means it can't be used to dodge laterally like most dodge moves in modern games. What this means is that if you want to avoid enemy fire, you simply strafe at your normal speed. This might seem limiting, but the game is designed around that strafing maneuver, so the end result is actually amazing. You see, without the ability to quickly dodge from side to side, you'll often get into this sort of run-and-gun groove, sort of like that scene from Commando where Arnold's running with the M60, gunning all those guys down. It feels so cool. It feels cool as hell when you're barely dodging all the enemy bullets whizzing past you as you're strafing around them, laying down return fire. Some of the encounter designs are just incredible. I felt like so much was being communicated just by how the enemies were engaging me. Let me just give you an example. There's a point in the game when you're being attacked by an organized military force guarding the big bad guy's home planet. They come at you with the normal waves of enemies, but then they try a new trick. They warp in a dozen cruisers along with a capital ship and try to gun you down with overwhelming firepower. But because you're in the Omega Boost, you're too quick for them. So, as you rocket from ship to ship, systematically wiping out their formation, the slow-moving cruisers crisscross and nearly crash into one another as they struggle to keep up with you. It's a really cool moment that shows how the game lets you turn the tide with your boldness and skill. If you didn't dive into the midst of that fight, they'd be able to more effectively target you. But by doing so, you threw them into disarray. In my head, I could just see enemy robot commanders of each ship panicking as I tore their plan to pieces. And that's really how the whole game is. At the start, you feel overwhelmed, and you feel like the enemies always have you on the ropes. But as you learn the boss's patterns and your skill at piloting Omega Boost increases, it becomes you who is in control. You go from barely surviving to dominating. Damn, that feels good. Let's talk about the music. The game's original soundtrack, by Japanese musician CMJK, is utterly fantastic and covers a wide tonal range. Fun fact, CMJK, real name Jun Kitagawa, also worked on the soundtrack of Macross Plus, giving him an existing connection to Shoji Kawamori, which is possibly how he came to work on Omega Boost in the first place. But beyond that, Omega Boost also bears the audio DNA of Polyphony Digital, a company that loves using licensed music. It was actually one of the things I loved most about the Gran Turismo series. It just made it so cool hearing all those songs from real bands. They brought that aesthetic to Omega Boost as well, and licensing various songs not only for different parts of the game, but for different regions. Yes, this tiny little game that got no promotion somehow had different licensed music for Japan, North America, and Europe. This can be most strikingly observed during the opening cutscene, where it really does change the tone of the action. I'll just let you hear how the music works with that.
Hyperspace catapult launcher ready. All personnel except catapult crew must exit the deck immediately. Repeat. All personnel except catapult crew must
First Lieutenant Lester, please board the Omega Boost.
Wetware is online, C-scan background is nominal, systems 367 and data Foxtrot jacked in. Okay, you're hot.
Want a souvenir?
Maryland's autograph. Got visual.
Coming through.
Hyperspace catapult launcher ready. All personnel except catapult crew must exit the deck immediately. Repeat. All personnel except catapult crew must exit the deck immediately. Catapult crew must take motion signals built to avoid space motion.
First Lieutenant Lester, please board the Omega Boost.
Wetware is online, C-scan background is nominal, systems 367 and Beta Foxtrot jacked in. Okay, you're hot.
Want a souvenir?
Maryland's autograph. Got visual.
Coming through.
Hyperspace catapult launcher ready. All personnel except catapult crew must exit the deck immediately. Repeat. All personnel except catapult crew must exit the deck immediately. Catapult crew must take motion signals toward space motion.
First Lieutenant Lester, please board the Omega Boost.
Wetware is online, C-scan background is nominal, systems 367 and Beta Foxtrot jacked in. Okay, you're hot.
Want a souvenir?
Maryland's autograph. Got visual.
Coming through.
Now, here's Omega Boost launching, and the big, awesome laser shot scene.
Your mission is to prevent the Alpha Core from causing historical alteration.
To the few people who loved this game, they all claim their version is the best, and I'm no different. I love the American version. It just seems to fit. One important reason I love the US version above all else, though, was the last boss fight.
Warning, undefined enemy.
Yeah, I know there's an argument to be made for the juxtaposition of softer music against heavy action, but this ain't that time. I loved how intense it was, how galloping, how heavy. You're in a fucking robot. It's the perfect time to get loud. So, almost 20 years later, as the only non-racing game Polyphony Digital ever released, hardly anyone remembers Omega Boost. But I remember. I remember a game so awesome It actually changed how I look at video games. Something about Omega Boost was perfect. A miraculous combination of influences that came together to make the kind of game not seen before nor since. It was a beautiful, flawed masterpiece that I will cherish as quite possibly the coolest mech game I've ever played. Few may remember you, but I'll never forget. Omega Boost, ready for death. Carry out the mission carefully.